Welcome to this deep dive, and today we're looking into Rio Tinto. It's a global mining company, and we've got two internal reports that are going to be the center of this discussion today. The first one is the Everyday Respect Report, and that was commissioned back in 2021, and it uncovered some really concerning issues about their workplace culture. And the second one, the 2024 Progress Review Report, is a follow-up to that, and it looks at how they've been working on those problems.
Right.
So we're going to dive into these reports together, see what's changed, and just unpack what it all means for anyone who is interested in, corporate culture, social responsibility, or even just, the sheer scale of trying to change a huge organization.
Yeah, I think what's really fascinating here is that these reports are kind of a rare look inside a global giant like Rio Tinto.
Right.
And they show us how they're trying to handle some, to be honest, pretty systemic issues. And I think these kinds of issues are probably present in a lot of organizations.
Yeah, it's not just about Rio Tinto, is it? This is about understanding how companies, especially really large ones, go about trying to shift their culture. And we can see how effective those efforts are.
Right.
So let's begin with the 2021 report, the one that really put Rio Tinto under the microscope. What were some of the most surprising findings that jumped out at you?
Well, the report itself is actually commissioned by Rio Tinto.
Right.
And they found that nearly 50% of their workers said they'd experienced bullying in the past 5 years.
Wow, almost half of their workforce. That's it's a really shocking number. I mean, it makes you wonder what was going on there in their workplace that allowed this behavior to become so widespread. And the report also showed that over 53% of women had experienced bullying. So it seems to have had a bigger effect on women.
Yeah, it wasn't just bullying, though. The report also had some disturbing stories of everyday sexism, sexual harassment, and even racism. These experiences were especially common for those working outside their home countries and also for Indigenous workers.
Reading those firsthand accounts in the report is it's pretty sobering. There was one woman who talked about feeling so unsafe walking past the camp bar at night that she had to call her husband every time.
Wow.
It makes you think about the impact this kind of environment must have on people's lives.
Yeah, this report really, it was like a bomb went off, both for Rio Tinto and for the industry as a whole. It put a lot of scrutiny on them and forced them to do something about it. And that's where this Everyday Respect Task Force, or ARC, comes in.
Okay, the Rio Tinto. So they were actually formed before the 2021 report came out.
Yeah.
But their role became a lot bigger after it, right?
Exactly.
Can you tell us a bit more about the ET and what their goals were?
So the ERT was first set up in 2019, but then the 2021 report meant that their responsibilities really expanded.
Yep.
And so they put in place these four main, what they call work streams. They were aimed at tackling these workplace culture problems head on.
Okay.
So the first one was all about making sure that, the leaders, the people at the top, were prepared to lead this change. The second one was about treating disrespectful behavior just as seriously as they would treat a physical safety issue.
Right.
The third one looked at improving those reporting mechanisms. So, if an incident of harassment or discrimination happened, it would be easier for people to report it.
Okay.
And then finally, the fourth work stream was all about providing better support to the people who'd been affected by these issues.
Okay, so it sounds like they were trying to change the whole mindset within the company,
Right.
starting from the top down.
Right.
And at the same time, they were trying to make it easier to report these incidents and make sure people could get the support they needed. It seems like a pretty, like they were trying to cover all the bases.
Yeah. It's a very thorough approach.
Yeah, a comprehensive approach. But the question is, did it actually work? And that's where this 2024 Progress Review comes in, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
The 2024 report gives us, a bit of a mixed picture. There are definitely some improvements, but there are also some ongoing problems.
Okay, so let's break that down a little. What are some of the areas where Rio Tinto has seen, positive changes?
So the review found that there is a greater awareness now of this Everyday Respect initiative.
Right.
And in some areas, they saw a decrease in the number of harmful behaviors being reported,
Okay.
which is positive. They also found that workers seem to be feeling a bit more comfortable speaking up about issues,
Oh, that's good.
which suggests there's a growing sense of psychological safety.
Yeah.
So people feel like they can speak up without being afraid of negative consequences.
Right, right. That's encouraging. It sounds like they are they're at least making some progress in creating an environment where people feel safer speaking out. What about tangible changes?
hmm
Did the report did it mention any specific improvements they made?
Yes, absolutely. The report mentioned that they had made some upgrades to facilities,
Mhm.
especially for women.
Okay.
So things like better bathrooms and locker rooms.
Yep.
And these were really appreciated by the workers,
Right.
especially women, because they felt like the company was actually listening to their concerns.
Mm,
They also saw some positive responses to, you know, their efforts to increase diversity,
right.
although keeping those diverse employees at the company is still a challenge.
Right, right. Well, it makes sense, right? I mean, it takes time to really build an inclusive culture, especially in a company that's as large and global as Rio Tinto.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's good to hear that they're at least making some progress. Now, the 2024 review also highlighted some issues, some problems, some concerns that are still sort of lingering, right?
hmm
So let's turn our attention to those. What are some of the things that still need work?
I think one of the biggest issues is that there's this disconnect between these senior leaders and the workforce, the people on the front lines.
Hmm.
A lot of employees, especially those in operational roles, feel like the leadership is just out of touch with what they experience every day.
So even with all of these programs and initiatives, there's still this gap between what the leadership is saying and what people on the ground are dealing with.
Exactly. Yeah. And there are also worries about how effective the leadership training is,
Hmm.
especially for people in supervisory roles. Some employees feel like their supervisors just aren't equipped to handle complaints properly or to, create a respectful and inclusive environment for their team.
Yeah, that's a really important point. It seems like just having policies and training isn't enough.
Right.
You really need people at every level who can actually put those principles into practice.
Absolutely.
So what other challenges did the report identify?
Well, another finding was that there's been some pushback, some backlash against the diversity initiatives.
Oh, okay.
Some men, for example, feel excluded or even threatened by the focus on gender balance.
Yeah.
And this, can create a difficult environment for everyone.
I can see how that would create some tension.
Yeah. It's a tough situation, because some people see these initiatives as progress, but others see them as a threat.
Right.
And it shows how complex cultural change is and how people perceive it very differently.
Absolutely. And this backlash can be very subtle, right? So it
Yeah.
might be even harder to deal with. Like, for instance, some women are being labeled diversity hires.
Right.
And that, kind of undermines their accomplishments and their skills.
Exactly. Yeah. And the report gives this, I thought it was quite concerning example
Mhm.
where an employee was told, don't sell this in the market by their manager while they were being given stationery. And that might seem like an offhand comment, but it reveals, a kind of underlying bias
Right.
that can make people feel unwelcome.
Yeah, these kinds of comments can really, even if they seem small, they can really chip away at someone's sense of belonging, over time.
Absolutely.
The report also pointed to some ongoing problems with the reporting mechanisms.
Hmm.
So what did they find there?
Well, despite their efforts to make improvements, systems like My Voice and the Care Hub, these are their internal reporting systems, they still lack trust among the employees.
Right.
They're worried about retaliation if they report incidents, and they feel like the process of investigation is just too long and too opaque.
So even if people are feeling more empowered to speak up, there's still this lack of faith in the system to actually a pretty big obstacle to overcome.
It is,
Yeah.
yeah. If workers don't believe that reporting something will lead to any real change, they're less likely to come forward at all.
Right.
And that means that harmful behavior can just carry on unchecked,
Right.
which, of course, makes it even harder to achieve real cultural change.
All of this raises some pretty interesting questions. I mean, what does it mean for a company of this size with a culture that seemingly allowed these behaviors to go on for so long? What does it mean for them to try to make such a big shift?
Yeah.
Is it even possible? And what does it tell us about trying to fix similar problems in other large organizations?
Those are really important questions. And we're going to explore them in more detail in the next part of our deep dive. We'll be looking at what lessons we can learn from Rio Tinto's experience and what it means for other companies that are trying to create truly inclusive and respectful workplaces.